and welcome to this new week. Welcome to February. No, this is not going to be a crumble cookie review. Why? I just wasn't super impressed this week, but I don't know. We'll see how I feel on Friday. But actually, we're here to talk about something else that I think is very important. You know that I've been talking a lot about quiet quitting because I've experienced it. And as I've said before, I think it's a whole epidemic within the workplace. But where there's quiet quitting, there's also quiet firing. This is the term that people aren't really talking about as much, but it's just as critical and as important for us to uncover, to discover, shed some light on it, talk about it, and see how we can fix it ultimately. So, quiet firing is really the other side of the coin to quiet quitting. What does that mean when we say quiet firing? It's basically when a manager is no longer providing training or input, feedback, resources, coaching, support, evaluation to an employee. And in some cases, it's in hopes that it will push the employee out or that they will want to quit on their own. It's essentially an indirect way of letting people go. It's a tragedy, if you ask me. I've been on both sides of it. It's all uncomfortable, and neither of it is helpful. Neither of it, in my opinion, brings about any change. It doesn't bring about anything positive, no growth, no nothing. It's just a whole hot mess. So the tragedy, really, of quiet firing, there's a couple things that I've outlined about it. One, for you to identify if you're doing that to other people, and also as an employee, for you to recognize that that's happening, right? Let's all just get on the same page together. But for one thing, is really poor leadership in general. As some of you all know, I am in a leadership space with the Complete Leader, and leadership development is so important to the success of an organization, a team, processes, strategic goals, all of that fun stuff. But it's poor leadership when this is even an option. It's bad enough when people don't feel fulfilled, and so they're like just showing up to work and doing the bare minimum. But it's even worse for managers to be like, I'm not gonna deal with that right now. I'm not gonna touch that. I don't want to touch that. It's not proactive. It's not getting to the heart of issues. Is poor leadership essentially. Obviously, it's gonna stunt the growth of the employees, of the workers, because they don't know if they're doing well, or you might have some people who genuinely want to be there, want to grow and do it. They don't know if there's no feedback, if there's no discussion, there's no game plan to move forward, and it pauses their career trajectory. And I have been there. I can't say it was necessarily quiet firing, maybe indirectly, and I'll get to more of what that means in a minute. But I've been in a place where I just couldn't go anywhere because I wasn't getting support, coaching, nothing from the leadership. So I'm a person that hates wasting anything, especially my time. And that's where a lot of waste occurs when we're in this space. In some cases, like I have titled this video, where there's quiet quitting, there is quiet firing. Sometimes it's happening at the same time. You might have an employee who's just like, oh, I don't care. I'm gonna show up here. Or maybe you have somebody that's untouchable. And I've been in that situation before, where you can't really get rid of somebody because of some nepotism, or maybe they've just put in a lot of years at the company and you can't really do anything about it. So they're like, I'm just gonna do the bare minimum. I don't really care. And then you're like, oh, I really don't want them to be here, but then I can't do anything about it. So in some cases, it's happening on both sides. And when that is occurring, when you have the quitter being quiet fired, that poisons the whole team. And uh, it's so disappointing for me to watch and experience that. And I have before, where you walk into a department meeting, or you come to provide training and support, and nobody cares. It's the worst thing. Again, for me, as a person that hates waste, I'm like, this is a waste of everybody's time, energy, resources. There could be opportunity for you to really take this company or this team to the next level, but we're just kind of sitting here in mediocrity. So ultimately, I think that's a tragedy. Is a tragedy. So why is this happening? Why is this even a thing on either side? But specifically focusing on quiet quitting, firing today. Well, in all honesty, and this is not in a way being malicious, and that's why I'm prefacing it by saying, hey, it's not always about they're trying to push somebody out. Sometimes it's the dynamic and the structure of the team or the department. Some professionals, some people that are in leadership, there are some managers who were promoted based on their hard skills, based on what they did well associated with their role. However, they lacked people skills, they lacked the soft skills. So essentially, they weren't equipped to manage other people. So you have a person that did really well within a role and they're being recognized for it and promoted, and then all of a sudden they get a team to go with it. So they're not always equipped to deal with the interpersonal aspect of the team and what that team needs essentially. So we can't always look at managers as being the big bad monster or being the devil or whatever. They don't know, they're just not equipped. In some cases, this happened because the company just doesn't leave room for any professional development or support or providing feedback or any of that. There's so much going on. I feel like we have more to dos than ever. I could say that personally, right? There's so many things that I think about in a day. And so sometimes I just take 15 minutes to just like not think because I've thought all of the thoughts of the day, right? But this also occurs in a office, in a work, in a corporate environment. There's just task, 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 task. We're just moving and doing and doing and doing and shuffling. And so to meet certain goals, or especially as we are coming out of COVID and transitioning from remote work and hybrid work to returning back to the office, all of these other dynamics, that there's just so many moving parts that need attention. Therefore, professional development is often the first program that's cut, or the first thing that's just like sloughed off the radar. And so there's just not room, or they haven't created room, I'll say, for people to be exposed, to be developed, to be sharpened, if you will. And so when that happens, it's another indirect way of quiet firing because somebody needs help, somebody's starving for support, and they're just not able to get it. So then they just say, well, I'm only going to do the bare minimum because I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing, or how to even build a career path within this company. This also happens because managers are burned out. Leaders get burned out. Yes, we can get burned out as employees, professionals, with just the amount of work and tasks that we have to deal with. But leaders also have work. They don't just, most most leaders don't just sit in their ivory offices like, lead. I'm gonna bring my hammer down and delegate as I sit here and just, let my minions run the show. They also have tasks. They are different kind of tasks. It might not be as much busy work, but they have stuff to do too. So in addition to the work they're doing, then they have to deal with complaints, they have to deal with low productivity, they have to deal with loops or gaps in processes and bottlenecks. They have to deal with people taking off for various reasons. They got a lot to deal with. So sometimes, like I mentioned a second ago, they have thought all the thoughts for the day. And so they don't have nothing else to give you, to develop you, to hear you out, to address your concerns. So those are some reasons why it happens. And then just taking a different turn on it, leaders do need support in doing that. So as you can tell, I'm positioning this in a way that we don't villainize our leaders when you just feel like you're being starved. Even though, like I said, this happens. You do have leaders that are like, I don't have grounds for firing this person, so I'm just gonna slowly step back and let them be miserable and unhappy until they find their way out, which I think is cowardly, and people like that just shouldn't be in leadership. I got a lot of thoughts on that, but specifically, I'm showing the equation of like what's happening on both sides when there's just a dynamic, and not when we're talking about malicious people. Because at the end of the day, the only solution to a manager like that who's malicious, who don't care, is like, oh, please hurry up and quit. That's probably the best thing for you to do anyway, unless you want to try to go toe to toe with HR and get them. I personally don't have the energy for all that if I'm already not getting anything here, but that's another story for another day. So, in support of leaders, I'm just going to read a really interesting quote that I got from the Gallup website, which says that only 37% of managers strongly agree that they invest in their employees' development. And even fewer employees, so only 25%, strongly agree that their manager invests in their professional development. So, as you can see, we've got two ships that are passing in the night. So, what do we do? What's the solution there? How can we apply things to even take these terms out of our language, our everyday language? For one thing, professional development needs to happen. We can't just be workhorses all day, every day. But when we institute professional development for our team, for our folks, some of it needs to be mutually agreed upon. I don't know if you've ever gone to a team building um, activity and you just like showed up and you're like, oh, what's happening? Okay, I guess we're doing this. And nobody's engaged because they didn't know what they were walking into. They don't like what's happening, but you have to be there. So when that happens, people are going to check out anyway. And for those who are on the verge of quitting or who are already quiet quitting, you're just giving them an excuse to continue in that lane. So there has to be some kind of mutuality between the manager and between the employee of what kind of professional development and the way that that's instituted in order for everybody to be on the same page and for you to have buy-in. Like I said, I've it's not a good feeling to be like, hey, we're doing a team building professional development and I have no clue what I'm walking into. So does that mean that we are awful employees? Like, why are we even doing this? That's not a good reason. And that's not a good setup to have people walking into. So um, let's look at professional development as a partnership between both parties. Leaders and managers also need their own kind of training. So, as we're going through this process, I feel like, and I've seen, and there's studies as well, is that when there's just group training or just group team building, that the manager is learning something, but their development is getting lost and diluted in the midst of bringing up the whole team. So it's important that leaders and managers have their own ongoing training, even more so, I think, than the employees, because the temperature of the team changes. You got to be able to be flexible and malleable and empathetic in order to continue to meet the needs of your team. And you get new people coming in, you have people leaving. We have millennials who are now making up 2/3 of the workforce. So there's transitioning happening. So as a manager, you need your own specialized attention and support in order to be able to do what you're responsible for well, and in order to be able to train and lead your folks in a way where they can take ownership, accountability, and really be uh, feel achievement in their role every day. And then the last thing I will say about support for leadership is that there needs to be a whole culture shift If you have coins laying around the office where one side is quiet quitting and the other side is quiet firing, then there needs to be a culture shift. That's not an easy thing to do. I just did a training uh, with the Complete Leader about top strategies for leaders to support employee motivation. And one of those strategies is creating a culture manifesto. So if you're a member of the Complete Leader, I actually will be talking about that the first week in March. That's going to be so good. Great details for you to take back with you. But the culture needs to shift because obviously there's been some things that have been going on that we're so used to that we're not addressing, to where everybody is just unmotivated and we have just squeezed the life out of things. And it's time to shake it up, to say, how can we come into this together to define who we are as a company, as a team, what we offer, but everybody's got a place within it. And that gives people a sense of ownership and achievement and accountability. So there needs to be a whole culture shift. And with that, I would suggest thinking about creating a culture manifesto that everyone has agreed upon, that they can live and work by, and then present that and be really the advocate for that for the company. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out with me on this day. That's all I've got for you, even though I think that's a lot. Sit on it, chew on it, see if you can recognize some of the things that maybe you've done or that other people have done to you or that you've experienced on both sides of the equation, and where you can take accountability so that you can have a great place to work, where you can help to create a great place to work, and where you can, have an awesome and successful career. Because we got to remember, leaders are employees as well. All right. Any thoughts, questions? Please message me. Um, Find me on the comments or on my website, upwardlypavepath.com. I mentioned the Complete Leader a couple times. There's over 1,000 resources in leadership training and development, and that is at thecompleteleader.org. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And if nothing else, I will see you next week.